So fire has been a thing in the Australian landscape for a long time. Indigenous people used fire, and Western people, when they came here, they used fire to clear the land. So recently, in the last 60 years, we've had a program here in Western Australia to reduce fuel levels in remaining bush. And this practice has accelerated, like it started with burning on the ground and with ground crew, and that has developed using aeroplanes, and currently helicopters are used to drop fire bombs in country. And we think as conservationists that this practice is not sustainable into the future. Country is being burned at 6 to 10 years intervals, and the majority of country is burned at this rate. So we think that this practice has to be reviewed, and possibly by an independent review panel. So we have been campaigning and lobbying the government to bring change into this practice. As I said, we think it is unsustainable. So very recently, Bill Smart, who lives next to a block of bush in the Manjimup area, east of Manjimup, contacted us and said a prescribed burn had been implemented there. So, and he asked for us to come and inspect. So we did, and we found this block completely annihilated. It had a large population of Numbats. There were injured kangaroos. 5,000 trees had fallen over through the fire. Canopy was burned. Habitat was incinerated. And we were absolutely shocked by the result. Hi, Bill. Nice to meet you, mate, and thanks for inviting us here. Because this, to me, it looks like a disaster zone. So maybe you can tell us how and when this fire started.
Well, this was going to happen about 2 years ago, but they postponed it last year, and it's got off the ground this year. I was sort of apprehensive about it because I know there was Numbats all through this bush. But anyway, it started, and it burned everything to a crisp, basically. I am totally devastated by what I've seen after the fire. I thought a prescribed burn was a mosaic of burnt, unburnt, and not bare sticks. So it came as a big shock.
Did the department come in and light it from the ground, or?
Yeah, they lit it on the northeast boundary. They started along there because it was southwesterly blowing. They established that line, and then they sent a helicopter in, and that dropped incendiaries all over it. And within 2 hours, the whole bush was ablaze. Pretty well instant. We were covered in smoke for days. Yeah, it was just a big shock to me because I wasn't expecting anything like this to happen. This is it was on the edge of the Weinup Nature Reserve, and that's the home for a range of threatened fauna. And that's another reason I wasn't expecting a fire like this, knowing we have such threatened animals living in this bush. And I've contacted the department before the fire, probably 18 months ago, and went around and showed them where I'd seen Numbats, and they taped logs and areas, and the plan was that those places weren't supposed to be burnt. But because the burn was delayed, that seemed to be ignored. And I can show you places where there's tape still hanging on the trees, sort of melted to the trees, and the logs where the Numbats used to live are no more. 3 weeks after the fire, I was doing some work on my farm which borders this fire, and I noticed a kangaroo who was lying down. He didn't want to get up. So I went over and had a look at him. And he was horrifically burnt on his legs. He struggled to get up, and I was quickly put an end to his misery, and then I contacted the minister to get DBCA to come and sort out these injured animals that were on my property. They come out and we discovered another 4 or 5 injured kangaroos on my property with similar burns. 3 of them had to be put down, and another couple we think will survive. It was devastating to see that. And since the fire, I've walked through the bush and I've seen other carcasses. So I suspect there's probably hundreds of dead, dying, suffering animals in this bush. The small ones, I don't think there's any trace left. Horrific.
And just then we found the skull of a small animal, which...
I'm not sure what sort of a little fella it was, but he obviously didn't survive either, Bart.
That's right. This fire doesn't look like a prescribed burn.
Yes, and some of the trees are actually defoliated. There's not a leaf left. Before this fire, I was in favour of prescribed burns because I was expecting a mosaic of, as I said before, burnt and unburnt bush, not a blackened devastation. So something's gone horribly wrong here. And the fact that it was firebombed is worse than a wildfire, because a wildfire burns on one front and most animals can escape. Most. The slow-moving ones would struggle. But in this fire, because thousands of fires were dropped from the air, within 2 hours all those fires joined together. There was no escape route. So to me, that's not sustainable. It threatens our already endangered wildlife. That is not the way to do it. Something is wrong. Something has to change. Hopefully, by showing people what's happened here, this won't happen again. We can all make mistakes, but we have to learn from our mistakes, and if we don't, something's horribly wrong. Well, I take a fair few photographs of birds. That's one of my passions. There's bird life everywhere, and in those Melaleuca swamps, there was wrens, all sorts of little birds. Now there's the bush is silent. Now they will probably come back, those little guys, but the parrots and those sorts of birds that rely on the nesting sites, the hollow logs, the hollow trees, they're no more, or there's a lot less of them. So the bush will be quieter, and it'll be quieter for a long time.
A long time.
Those habitat trees, I believe, takes 150 years to develop the hollows required for the creatures that live in them. If we burn every 25 years and destroy another 5,000, there's going to be none left. It's not sustainable.
No. Currently we've got bare earth here. There's nothing covering the earth. What will nature do to restore that?
Cosmetically, nature will very quickly get a paintbrush out and paint everything green, and within a couple of years it'll look wonderful. But it will only be cosmetic. You cannot replace the habitat trees that have fallen down.
Maybe we can talk about Numbats. Like this was a declared Numbat area.
Yes, and they were, well, I estimate there was probably between 50 and 65 Numbats lived in this block of bush, given that they take about 30 or 40 hectares per Numbat. That's the area they need to survive and feed. I can't see how many of them survive this fire, because all their logs are severely burnt, or they're no longer there, they're ash. Now where are they gone? There's only 1,000 left in the world. Is this how we treat them?
Yeah.
They're an endangered species. I thought we had an obligation, a legal obligation in front of the world to protect those little animals. Their state emblem. I can't understand why special effort wasn't made to do more to protect these little guys.
Yeah.
I've had them visit my shed and taken photos, one look on the ground. I've taken numerous other photos of them. They're the most beautiful little animal and so rare, hardly anyone has ever seen them. But this is a hotspot for them. Well, a hotspot literally now. They've been cremated, I think. I'm very saddened by their demise, which it is their demise. It should not have happened.
Let's talk about the Melaleuca swamps. Since the fire, you've extensively looked at this area. You've walked it. You've cleared tracks which obstructed by fallen trees.
Yeah, I wanted to get a look of what's happened. I wanted to see what's happened to my little friends who live in the bush. I see no trace of them. The Melaleuca swamps, there's quite a few in this area. I know of only one small swamp that's remained reasonably intact. The rest are just black sticks. Now they have huge paperbark trees in them, some of them 50 foot tall, a metre thick, probably hundreds of years old. They're now just black curly sticks. I think we could have treated them a little bit better, or yeah, it's just sad. I think DBCA gauges the success of their controlled burns by the height of the scorching of the bush, and they don't like to see the crown being scorched. They like to see a fair bit of green, and virtually no scorch canopy to be a really good burn, quiet burn. This is a classic example of things gone horribly wrong, because some of these trees are not only scorched, they're defoliated. There's no leaves left, and that's 20 metres high. So something is gone amiss here.
And how many trees would you think have actually succumbed to this fire?
I've estimated 5,000 habitat trees, but I reckon there'd probably be an equal number above that of smaller trees. There's trees everywhere on the ground, from saplings to giants. Prescribed burn doesn't usually burn trees to the ground. That is another benchmark of the failure of this burn, in my opinion. One of the most disturbing things about this burn is the destruction of habitat trees. This burn comprised an area of 1,855 hectares. I've estimated there's been about 3 habitat trees per hectare that are now on the ground. These trees support abundant array of wildlife in hollows and what have you. Black cockies nest in those hollows. Possums live in them. Phascogales. They're on the ground, and there's a lot more that's going to end up on the ground as soon as we have a winter storm, because they're that badly burnt. There is no future for our forests if we don't protect these trees. That's the future of our forests. And no one seems to care, especially in DBCA, that these trees are now lying down on the ground. It's not sustainable. We cannot do it this way, otherwise our grandkids and great-grandkids will never see a bush alive with bird life and animal life. We owe it to them to lift our game and do a better job than what we've done here.
Could you describe, after the burn, how that has affected you personally?
I'm very saddened. Like the bush, I will recover to some extent. But the memory of what I've seen here, I will never forget. and it has changed my opinion on prescribed burning. This should not happen ever again.